Hi there, I hope you're doing well today. My name is Juliet Uzor and I want to share with you this quick and fun way that I like to adapt my patch pockets. This can be used to add a fun element to your dresses, your skirts, and even jumpsuits or sleeveless jackets like this one I've got on here. I really hope you find this patch pocket easy to make, and I hope you find the instructions easy to follow. We will start off with the smallest rectangle, and this rectangle would need to be folded over and the shorter edges would be pinned together. Then we would have to sew using a 1 centimeter seam allowance. After sewing, turn over to the right side. I like to have the seam in the middle of the tab, just to make sure that I do not have a lumpy edge, if that makes sense. After turning it over, please press. I have my 2 rectangles here, and you can see that the rectangle on top is the narrower one. It's just narrower by 1 centimeter. What you would need to do is to fold it over lengthways. So when you fold it over lengthways, you would need to identify the center point of this rectangle. I decided to use a pin to mark the center point along the folded edge because I couldn't make a notch there. But because I now have this center point, I can then position the folded tab exactly at the middle point of this rectangle. With this folded over, I can now bunch over to create some sort of a bow. So you can see that I'm gradually pleating it, just tiny little pleats. It doesn't have to be perfect. Need to get the pin out of the way. And then fold over the tab. Now we have that tab folded over, we can pin it in place. Now locate your other rectangle and find the midpoint of the rectangle along the shorter edge of the rectangle. The reason why we're marking these midpoints is just to make sure that things are centered and balanced. Place the right side of the pleated rectangle on top of the wrong side of the flat rectangle and pin it in place. Please don't forget this part. You would also notice that there's a bit of an excess at the edge of the pleated rectangle. Don't worry, things would balance out eventually. Now we're going to sew from one end to the other of the rectangle just to get the pleated rectangle stitched onto the flat rectangle. At this point, you also want to finish off the raw edge using whichever method works for you. Back to that excess fabric, we would need to trim it off, otherwise it would end up looking something like this. Now we want to make sure we trim off that excess part, because it would just cause a bit of a lump on the inside of the pocket if we do not trim it. So allowing the pleated rectangle to lie naturally and just nice and flat on the flat rectangle, we pin it in place and trim. The reason why I have my pins far away from the edge is to make sure that I don't cut through the pins using my scissors. So now you can see how it lies naturally, ready for us to understitch. In order to understitch successfully, you want to stitch the seam allowance onto the flat rectangle, not the bunched up one. You want it to happen on the flat one, because that would be on the inside, if that makes sense. Press and then understitch. You'd notice that my pins are being positioned far away from the edge of the pockets, and the reason for that is I don't want the pins to get caught when I finish off the raw edges and when I press under the edges of the pockets. This would be the point where we take it over to our machine, could be your sewing machine or your overlocker, to finish off the raw edges of your pockets. When you're done, you would need to press under 1 centimeter along the raw edges of the pocket. So there are 3 edges there that are raw, and those would need to be pressed under by 1 centimeter. Pressing is very important through all the stages of the process of making this pocket. You want to make sure that you press as you go, and I tend not to overpress the pleated part of the pocket, just to make sure that the pleats lie as naturally as possible and they do not get crushed. I would also love to know your experience using pressing tools like these ones. I used to have a metal one, but I found that it used to burn my fingers. So I had to switch to this one, which I am not too sure what material it is. I think it's a Teflon type of material. But yeah, I'd like to know your experience with using pressing tools. Please let us all know in the comment section what you normally do when you press fabric, or are you just want to eyeball it, or do you use a ruler or a gauge? Yeah, let's get the conversation going about pressing fabric as we sew. With the top section pinned in place, let's have a look to see different ways we can play around with fabric whilst making these types of pockets. So I have here this gingham fabric. This is actually a double gauze reversible fabric, and I've opted for the smaller checks as the base and the chunky checks to go on top of them. Also, you can play around with your stripes. With this one here, you can see that my stripes are going in different directions, and it just makes me so happy playing around with these stripes. If you're using a fabric that is a bit more drapier, you might want to iron on some interfacing, about 1 inch wide interfacing, onto the top edge of the flat rectangle, just to make sure that it helps stabilize that pocket. When you're happy with your pockets, it's time to think about the positioning of the pockets on the garments you do create. Some people might prefer to have the pockets along the side seams of a dress or a skirt. Some people might just want them to be positioned right in front of the garments. This totally depends on your taste or on your style preferences. But I've gone with mine along the side, so it's not bang on the side seam of the dress. I just have it very close to the side seam of my dress, and it just makes me so happy. It's nice and chunky, and I can have as many things inside the pockets as possible. This is a sleeveless dress that I made using a sewing pattern from the course that I have on Domestika. Thanks so much for your time, and if you do use this technique in any of your garments, please don't forget to take a photo and tag me on Instagram or TikTok at Juliet Uzor_. All the very best. Take care. Bye.